The 7 hidden reasons. Airlines overbook flights. It's not what you think. Overbooking feels like a personal insult. You paid for a seat, you followed the rules, you showed up on time, and then the airline tells you the flight is full and asks for volunteers. From the passenger side, it feels sloppy, greedy, or deliberately unfair. But overbooking isn't random, and it isn't a casual gamble. It's a tightly engineered response to how modern airline networks actually behave under pressure. Once you understand the real reasons behind it, overbooking stops looking like carelessness and starts looking like a defensive strategy built into the system. Airlines don't overbook because they assume you won't show up. They overbook because the system they operate inside is fragile, interconnected, and financially unforgiving when even a small number of seats go empty. Welcome to Passport Pointers, where we explain the hidden mechanics of air travel so you can stop taking airline decisions personally and start understanding how the system really works. Today we're breaking down the 7 hidden reasons airlines overbook flights and why most of them have nothing to do with what passengers usually think. Do us a small favor. Hit that thumbs up and subscribe to Passport Pointers. We post weekly videos revealing travel secrets, tips, tricks, and hacks. We're also working on several how-to, step-by-step videos. Share in the comments what you'd like us to work on next. There's a lot on the horizon for 2026. Reason 1. Empty seats are more damaging than displaced passengers. Airlines sell a perishable product. Once an aircraft pushes back from the gate, every empty seat represents revenue that can never be recovered. There is no resale window, no clearance rack, no second chance. That value disappears the moment the door closes. Because airline margins are thin, empty seats are not a minor inconvenience. They're a structural risk. Even a small percentage of unused seats, multiplied across thousands of daily departures, translates into massive revenue loss over time. Overbooking exists first and foremost to prevent that loss. From the airline's perspective, reaccommodating a small number of passengers is less damaging than flying with guaranteed empty inventory. This isn't about indifference to passengers, it's about protecting the economics of the operation. Reason 2. Passenger arrival is far less predictable than it looks. From the outside, passenger arrival seems simple. People book a flight, show up at the airport, board the plane, and go. Airlines know better. Arrival behavior is one of the least predictable variables in the entire system, and that unpredictability is exactly why overbooking exists. A surprising number of passengers don't arrive when they say they will. Some misjudge traffic, others misread boarding times. Some miss the cutoff by minutes, while others never show up at all because a connecting flight ran late, a rideshare canceled, or a family emergency changed plans at the last second. Even seasoned travelers occasionally assume they have more time than they do. Airlines model this chaos relentlessly. They analyze historical data by route, time of day, season, weather patterns, and even local events. Certain flights reliably produce late arrivals and no-shows. Early morning departures behave differently than late night ones. Leisure-heavy routes behave differently than business routes. None of it is guesswork. Because arrival behavior fluctuates, selling exactly 1 seat per passenger would leave planes flying partially empty far more often than airlines can afford. Overbooking is the hedge against human unpredictability. It smooths out the randomness. What feels like a personal mistake when you arrive late is, from the airline's perspective, a known category of outcome. They expect some passengers to vanish from the process. Overbooking fills that gap in advance, ensuring the aircraft still departs as full as possible when reality inevitably diverges from the plan. Reason 3. Connection failure is built into the network. Airlines don't just tolerate missed connections, they quietly depend on them. The entire hub-and-spoke network is designed with failure margins that look small on paper and enormous in real life. Flights arrive slightly late, gates sit far apart, and minimum connection times assume perfect conditions that almost never exist. When one inbound flight slips by 10 minutes, the system doesn't break. It produces a predictable number of stranded passengers. That predictability is valuable. Overbooking works because airlines know a percentage of travelers will miss onward flights due to congestion, weather ripples, crew timing, or air traffic control flow. Those seats free up without the airline having to deny boarding at the gate. From an operations standpoint, missed connections are cheaper than compensation. The network also concentrates risk. Busy hubs stack arrivals in waves, creating pressure at security rechecks, passport control, and terminal transfers. any disruption compounds. Airlines model this behavior carefully, using historical data to estimate how many people won't make it through the maze in time. They sell seats accordingly. What feels like bad luck to the traveler is often a known outcome to the planner. The airline isn't surprised when connections fail. It planned for some of them to. Overbooking then becomes less about greed and more about absorbing the system's own friction. Passengers experience chaos. The network experiences balance. Reason 4. Schedule changes create invisible capacity gaps. Schedule changes are one of the least visible reasons flights end up overbooked, even though they happen constantly. Airlines adjust departure times, aircraft assignments, and routing months, weeks, and sometimes days before a flight. Each change seems minor on its own. Together, they quietly reshape how many seats are actually available. When an aircraft type changes, seat counts change with it. A plane swap can reduce capacity by a handful of seats without triggering alarm for most passengers. The reservation system absorbs the difference automatically, but the flight may already be sold out on paper. Suddenly, more people are confirmed than the aircraft can physically carry. Time changes create a similar effect. When flights shift earlier or later, some passengers can no longer make them work and get rebooked onto alternatives. Those alternatives may already be heavily booked. Capacity moves around the network, but demand doesn't move cleanly with it, leaving some flights carrying extra confirmed passengers. Airlines rely on historical cancellation and no-show behavior to offset these gaps. Most of the time it works. When it doesn't, the overbooking becomes visible at the gate instead of remaining a back-end adjustment. From the traveler's perspective, it looks like the airline oversold a flight out of greed. In reality, the mismatch often started weeks earlier with a quiet schedule change that reshaped capacity without reshaping demand. Overbooking isn't always intentional excess. Sometimes it's a delayed correction catching up to reality. Reason 5. Overbooking is cheaper than adding capacity. Adding flights sounds like the obvious solution, but it's expensive. Every additional flight requires crews, fuel, maintenance slots, gates, and air traffic coordination. And there's no guarantee that added capacity will be fully used. Overbooking, by contrast, is relatively inexpensive. Paying compensation to a small number of volunteers often costs far less than operating additional flights or flying with empty seats. This is why compensation offers can escalate quickly at the gate. The airline has already calculated that paying a few passengers is cheaper than the alternatives. Have you ever volunteered to take a later flight in exchange for compensation, or do you avoid overbooked situations entirely? Share your experience in the comments. We read them, and they help guide what we cover next. Reason 6. Loyalty and fare classes shape who gets protected. When flights are overbooked, airlines don't panic. They sort. And the sorting isn't random or first come, first served the way passengers often assume. Loyalty status and fare class quietly determine who gets protected and who gets exposed when seats run out. The boarding pass in your hand carries more information than you think, and airlines read it like a priority map. Frequent flyers, premium cabin passengers, and higher fare classes are statistically less likely to be bumped, rebooked poorly, or stranded overnight. Not because airlines like them more, but because these travelers are more valuable over time. They generate repeat revenue, corporate contracts, and credit card partnerships. Protecting them is a business decision, not a courtesy. Lower fare classes absorb more risk by design. Discount tickets often come with fewer protections buried in the fare rules. When disruptions hit, these passengers are easier to move, delay, or deny boarding to without triggering expensive compensation or long-term backlash. The airline still follows the rules, but the rules were written with hierarchy in mind. This structure also gives airlines flexibility. Overbooking becomes safer when you already know which passengers are least likely to cause downstream cost. From the outside, it looks unfair. From the inside, it looks efficient. The hidden truth is that loyalty programs aren't just reward systems, they're risk management tools. Overbooking works because airlines know exactly who they can inconvenience with the least financial pain. Reason 7. Overbooking is a network-level decision. Overbooking is not decided one flight at a time. It's managed across the airline's entire network, where individual flights are treated less like standalone journeys and more like movable parts in a much larger system. When airlines decide how aggressively to overbook, they aren't asking, will this specific flight have too many passengers? They're asking, if something goes wrong here, where can these passengers go next? Airlines constantly evaluate recovery pathways. That includes how many later flights exist on the same route, whether nearby hubs offer alternate connections, how full those downstream flights usually are, and how quickly disrupted passengers can be absorbed without cascading delays. A flight leaving a major hub with multiple same-day options behind it is far safer to oversell than a flight serving a small city with one departure a day. The network can correct itself in the first case. In the second, it can't. This is why two flights that look identical to passengers can behave very differently when overbooked. Same aircraft type, same distance, same airline. Yet one resolves smoothly while the other turns into a gate standoff. The difference isn't luck, it's network math. One flight sits inside a dense web of alternatives. The other sits at the edge. Airlines model these scenarios using historical disruption data, passenger flow patterns, and connection probabilities. They know where passengers are most likely to miss onward flights, where delays compound fastest, and where spare capacity usually exists. Overbooking is calibrated to that reality. From the passenger's perspective, the decision feels personal and local. In reality, it was made far away from the gate, based on how the entire system is expected to behave when things inevitably don't go as planned. Why regulations don't eliminate overbooking? In many countries, including the United States, airlines are required to compensate passengers who are involuntarily denied boarding. These rules don't eliminate overbooking, they define its boundaries. Airlines design their strategies knowing exactly when compensation applies and how much it might cost. That predictability makes overbooking manageable rather than prohibitive. Why overbooking is unlikely to disappear. As long as airline economics punish empty seats and reward full planes, overbooking will exist. Technology has improved prediction, but it hasn't eliminated uncertainty. Weather, human behavior, and complex networks will always introduce risk. Overbooking is how airlines manage that risk at scale. What this means for you as a passenger. Understanding overbooking doesn't mean you have to like it, but it changes how you interpret it. You start to recognize which flights carry higher risk. You understand why airlines ask for volunteers early. You see compensation offers as cost control tools, not generosity. Most importantly, you stop taking overbooking personally and start treating it as a system behavior you can plan around. If you want more Passport Pointers breakdowns that explain what airlines are really optimizing for behind the scenes, watch the next video that's popping up on your screen right now. Thanks for watching Passport Pointers, and I'll see you in the next video.